Manchester City have officially clinched the Premier League title. Arsenal are going to finish second. I've brought on an Arsenal fan for his shoot it straight debut. Declan, welcome to the channel. And let's just get straight into it. How are you feeling about Man City officially clinching the Premier League title?
I'd like to ask the question, how are Man City feeling about those 115 FFP violations? Like it is what it is, man. You can't beat a state-backed club like that. They have too much money, they have too much funding, and they seemingly can get away with everything. And also, all respect to Pep Guardiola. He's an amazing manager, one of the best managers of all time. But is he really challenging himself at Manchester City? I don't know. I feel like everyone kind of expected this result. Not a couple Arsenal fans that expected this result, but me myself as an Arsenal fan, I always kind of expected City to kind of turn it into gear at the end of the season and just kind of make us kick rocks.
Hmm.
But other than that, you just got to keep pushing, keep moving forward, set your
Hmm.
guys to next season, and hope that the players don't become super disillusioned and try to leave.
Hmm. Obviously, all is not lost for Arsenal this season. I mean, you clinched Champions League football, your first time being back in the Champions League for many years, I think. I don't know the exact number, but how do you think you can do in that competition going forward next season?
I have a lot of trust in Arteta in cup competitions. Obviously, he won the FA Cup in his first year at Arsenal, and he's kind of floundered in the Europa League since then. But Europa League's a weird competition. People are playing above their level. People are playing below their level. It's a weird equalizer that a lot of teams aren't really prepared for entirely. And Arsenal this year clearly weren't as they lost to Sporting CP in penalties after that terrible half field goal. But I,
Hmm.
I do have a lot of trust in Arteta for the Champions League. I think he's got the club moving in the right direction, and like culturally, he's completely changed the club. So I hope he continue to do that in the Champions League as well.
Where do you think you can do in the Premier League next season? Like, obviously, it seems as if the gap between Man City and the rest of the league is pretty vast, I would say. Even though Arsenal did do very well to, push them to this, point. Because if Arsenal weren't there, let's just be honest, they would have had this wrapped up by the World Cup. Do you think you can push them this far again? Maybe even win it next season?
I absolutely do. We have the youngest team in the league, youngest starting 11 in the league, and we're only going to get better. We only have more players wanting to join us. We got Declan Rice, who's itching to join us this summer, which I'm super excited about. Um, and you just got to keep pushing forward. I mean, Man City are going to continue to get better, so the only thing you can do is continue to get better. And the goal this season was top four, and now from now on out, I feel like the goal has to be the title every year, at least with this current core. You can't be settling for top four anymore. We've seen what this team can do. We've seen how they can dominate games, and you just got to go for the league now.
Do you consider it a bottle? I mean, this is the debate that's been going on social media. Did Arsenal actually bottle the league? You were up 8 points with 9 games to go. To me, it seems like a bottle. Do you think it's a bottle?
It's a bit of both, right? Because context matters. Look at everyone going into the season. Everyone said Arsenal aren't going to make top four with this squad, and now everyone's calling them bottlers for not winning the league. So, like, what is it? Like, who's moving the goalposts, right? Is it the rival fans or is it Arsenal fans? And I think it's a little bit of both. Like Arsenal fans throughout the season, they're like, oh, we're going to do it. This is the year the Reece Nelson goal happened. All these stars are aligning moments happened. Arsenal fans got increasingly confident that it was going to happen, and they kind of moved those goalposts towards the title. But rival fans at the beginning of the season were saying this Arsenal team is trash and they have no future, and Arteta is not the guy to lead them. So to call it a bottle, I think is a bit misleading. It's very disappointing for sure, but I wouldn't call it a bottle.
Hmm. Do you consider Arteta to be the second best manager in the Premier League behind Pep Guardiola?
Yes, I do consider Arteta to be the second best manager in the league, mainly because the way he's transformed Arsenal as like culturally. I mean, like Granit Xhaka being back into the team is insane after telling the fans to fuck off. He literally told them to fuck off and essentially gave them the middle finger on the pitch, said that he was leaving last summer for Roma, all this. Arteta's brought everyone back into the fold. And I know Xhaka's leaving this summer, but this season was immaculate the way he brought everyone back in, creating that kind of winning culture and that family culture that Arsenal was deprived of ever since Wenger left in 2018.
And obviously, you have your own transfer wish list of what you want Arsenal to do in this upcoming transfer window. It's a massive transfer window for Arsenal. They have to make some key additions to this squad in order to potentially compete with Man City for the title. Who would you like to see them bring in?
Obviously, number one, I want Declan Rice. I think Declan Rice, he won't play as a holding midfielder for us. I think he's playing as number eight in Granit Xhaka's role. I think this is primarily due to his his ability to kind of drop behind in Zinchenko when Zinchenko inverts, because Zinchenko is very comfortable attacking and going forward, but you have to find a midfielder that's comfortable dropping behind a left back in an inversion scenario. And there aren't that many midfielders that can do that. So pretty much what you have to look for is a holding midfielder who progresses the ball a lot. And Declan Rice is exactly that. And he's English, he's young, he has leadership traits. He's exactly what we need to replace Granit Xhaka. It'd be perfect. Beyond that, we obviously need more cover for Bukayo Saka. I struggle to suggest Musa Diaby because the Bundesliga just scares me. And Ivan Frisneda, I think, is supposedly joining, which would be a great addition to the defense. As we've seen, Tomiyasu is not that reliable. And that Arsenal back four with any substitutes is just, it's really not the same. And obviously, Caicedo is still being pursued, which would be a great pickup. I think he'd play the holding 8 role or the holding 6 role very well for us. But you just gotta make sure that all these players align with the current squad that you have. And I think that's something that Arteta has done a tremendous job of doing. His talent ID is next level. The way he scouts players and makes sure that they're a good cultural fit as well is very Wenger-esque. He's taking a lot of notes from Pep, Wenger, and Sir Alex Ferguson. He's looking towards the best managers in the history of the Premier League and trying to mold his team into amalgamation of all their styles. And I think it's going to work out very well.
You spoke of those elite, managers in Premier League history. Obviously, we're looking way into the future here. Do you think Arteta eventually can join that elite crop of managers? When we're talking about the greatest managers of all time in the Premier League, we think, Sir Alex, now Pep. Can Arteta get himself in that conversation when it's all said and done?
He has the ability, but it's all about titles, trophies, trophies, trophies. People don't talk about, oh, this Arsenal team was so fun to watch. They're going to talk about how many things they won and what accolades they receive. It doesn't matter what kind of football you play, what kind of fans you bring in, the culture you change, if you don't win anything. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to win something for it to matter in the future.
And that brings up a whole nother conversation because obviously this is a good season for Arsenal, but he didn't have any titles. I mean, Chelsea this season, the worst season in their club's history, since 1996, and 0 trophies. Of course, Arsenal have their best season in years, 0 trophies. So some people are saying this season could be considered a failure for Arsenal. Do you feel the same way?
There's no way that you can call this season a failure for Arsenal. Getting back in the Champions League for the first time in 7 years is absolutely massive. There have been multiple managers that have been on the record as saying that top 4 is a trophy now. The Premier League is more competitive than it's ever been. It is like Newcastle jumped into the top 4 this year. It's something that people weren't expecting at all. Everyone has the money to compete, and it's just week in, week out, you have to give your all and play with a very expensive 11 to win anything in the Premier League. I mean, the stratospheres are stretching, and it's going to be harder to win.
Yeah. Well, that's why I see this transfer window as so important for Arsenal because, look, they've done great this season, but they have to reload because Newcastle is going to reload. They have all the money in the world. City are only getting better. United are going to reload. I think they're going to really back Ten Hag in this transfer window. The whole Premier League is going to continue to get better. And if Arsenal stagnate and they do not make the signings they need to make in this transfer window, I could see them going from second now and then falling out of the top 4 completely because this is the Premier League. Anything can happen season to season. I don't think anyone can bridge the gap between Man City and the rest of the league within one season, but anyone else, I could see anyone else bridging the gap from them and Arsenal this season if they don't make the proper signings.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the 19 teams in the league versus each other. It's cities at the top. They're at the top of the pedestal. So you're really just competing against everybody else, at least in the transfer window and for the foreseeable future, I guess. But I think Arsenal do have a really good opportunity to retool this summer, but a lot of it rests on Edu's shoulders. He's gotten some good players in, but his negotiation strategy has been mid at best. I mean, there's been a lot of second choices for Arsenal in terms of their transfer strategy. I mean, even last summer, their primary target for left back was Lisandro Martinez, and they lost out on that very easily. And in January, they lost out on Mudryk. You can go on and on and on. And if that happens this summer after securing Champions League football, after showing the improvement at the club, I think a lot of questions have to be asked about Edu and the way he negotiates deals. And also the board. I mean, it's also on the board. Edu's not the only person negotiating these deals. There are a lot of other people behind the scenes involved.
And also, we've seen in the past Arsenal don't quite have the willingness to spend maybe as such as other clubs, and I think also it comes down to that as well. They're going to have to break the bank in order to bring in Declan Rice into the club, to bring in a Caicedo. These players are not going to be cheap. We're talking potentially 100 million players.
Yeah, but one thing I will say is that Arsenal have a lot of potential outgoings this summer, like Florian Balogun, which is going to be huge. We like Arsenal haven't had a sale of over 35 million since Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain left for Liverpool.
Mhm.
Actually, Alex Iwobi, I believe, was around 35 million as well. But those are a long time ago. Those are like the Wenger era. It's far removed from any current Arsenal that exists right now. We've seen Aubameyang essentially go for free, Bellerin go for free, Mustafi go for free, Socrates go for free. So being able to recoup some of this transfer value will help us a lot in the transfer market this summer in terms of just kind of blowing the bag and hopefully signing two elite midfielders.
You mentioned Balogun, obviously, he's been doing amazing in Ligue 1 this season, and you mentioned that you do see him leaving the club. Do you think that's the right decision, or should he, step into get a chance at Arsenal?
From what I've seen, Balogun on loan, the thing about Will Still's play style is that it's very transitional. There are a lot of long balls being played in. They kind of bank on chaos happening in the final third, which is the exact opposite of Mikel Arteta's philosophy. Arteta wants everything in control, everything in his players' control in the final third, and he wants absolute control. It's just something that I don't think Balogun would excel in. I mean, we saw him start against Brentford in the first game of 21-22, but he was granted he's a much different player now, but he really wasn't that good in Mikel Arteta's system. I think you got to cash in now while the money's hot and just kind of hope he regresses, or if he progresses, it is what it is.
But is Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus a good enough, 1-2 punch, at the 9 position to win a Premier League title? Do you really think that's the case? Because obviously Jesus was injured for a large majority of this season. Unfortunately, what happened at the World Cup, of course. But assuming both of those stay healthy next season, can a 1-2 punch of Nketiah and Jesus win you a title?
I mean, we've seen that it can get you close, so I think you just got to keep riding with it. I think there's no reason to kind of switch up the formula right now. Although I do have some reservations about Jesus and Nketiah physically. I think that a profile like Evan Ferguson, tall, technically talented, would be huge up front for Arsenal. I mean, we saw Mikel Arteta wanted Dusan Vlahovic
Hmm.
uh, 2 Januaries ago, and Vlahovic's agent didn't even pick up the phone. But that's neither here nor there. But Mikel Arteta clearly wants a more physical number 9 up top, and in the Premier League, that's needed, as we've seen with Holland. Holland is dominating the league, and he's also a superhuman type player.
Hmm.
But that kind of profile is huge for a possession-based side. It gives you a lot of different angles of attack in the final third. It also gives you a lot of just variability,
Hmm.
because with Jesus and Nketiah, like every defense knows what they're getting. I mean, Jesus can win a header sometimes. He's good when he reaches up and gets it. He can head the ball pretty much wherever he wants. But the problem is reaching up and getting it. He like Gabriel Jesus cannot go against Dan Burn and win a header. Dan Burn is 6'5" and plays left back, and like there's just no way that he's competing against him. And like
Hmm.
with teams like Newcastle strengthening and getting taller and bigger players, I think it's just going to be even tougher for them to compete. But as I said, they came close, and I think you just got to run it back for now. And after next season, see what happens and retool.
I wanted to ask you about Ramsdale, obviously, because at certain points throughout the season, I've been critical of Ramsdale. I got a lot of backlash from Arsenal fans for giving Ramsdale criticism. Do you think Ramsdale is good enough for the Arsenal level?
I do think Ramsdale is good enough, but it's very frustrating watching Ramsdale sometimes. Like during that Sporting Europa League game, that that home leg was awful after that half field goal was scored, because you could tell that Ramsdale was just destroyed emotionally. And when I saw it was going to pens, I knew it was over. And he didn't save a single penalty, not a single one. He had a couple deflect off his hands just into the net. And that's kind of a common thing with Ramsdale. His wrist strength just seems a little bit off sometimes. It seems like his mind isn't connected to his wrists. But he's 24, so one of the youngest goalkeepers in the league. I say you just keep pushing. There aren't a lot of goalkeepers that are this good at this age, and I think
Hmm.
there's no reason to get rid of him. Obviously, he just signed a new contract, um, but I do think Ramsdale is the future. He causes a lot of chaos when booting the ball out, which I think is good in transition situations, and he also is just a great dressing room guy. I mean, there are a lot of culture fits that like fans have a hard time seeing, like Rob Holding. Rob Holding is a huge culture fit for Arsenal. He's not the greatest player, but he keeps everyone together in the locker room. I believe he's the one who always plays music before games. It's stuff like that that you don't see behind the scenes that really kind of keeps a team together that you kind of need sometimes, more so than actual player ability.
Mm-hmm. And this is obviously about Man City this season. Of course, obviously they've just clinched the Premier League title. Now they still have the FA Cup final to play and the Champions League final to play. Do you consider them the favorites to go on and win a treble?
Obviously, yeah. Inter Milan, like, are we really trusting Lautaro Martinez in a final to beat Manchester City? Almost 100-point Manchester City this year. Like, he- I don't see anyone on that Inter team really making a push to win that game. And FA Cup, City dominate domestic cups.
Mm-hmm.
I expect Pep to go into Wembley and make it a clean sweep.
Yeah, I mean, I said on a previous video, I would give Inter a negative percent chance to go and win this Champions League final. I mean, I just don't see a way. This City team is absolutely loaded. They have no weaknesses. Their depth is amazing. That's the thing about the City team, and that's why the gap is so big between them and the rest of this Premier League. We just saw it against Chelsea today. Their B team just beat Chelsea. The Chelsea that spent 600 million, and just we didn't even have a sniff. Obviously, this Chelsea team is an absolute disaster. Frank Lampard, this and that, but it just goes to show how good the City team is, how far and vast the gap is between them and the rest. And it's interesting, um, that Arsenal were able to push them to the brink. And I give them their props for that. Obviously, I control Arsenal all I want, but at the end of the day, I do have to give them their props because if like I said, if they didn't exist, this City team would have won the title by the World Cup. That is how much better they were than everyone else this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to give a lot of credit to Pep there too. I mean, coming into the season, everyone was like, "Oh, Haaland, Haaland, Haaland," but not a lot is being said about Nathan Ake and his role as a left back. There are a lot of things that Pep is doing behind the scenes that are subtly improving this City team beyond the finances, beyond the money. He's truly an exceptional manager in every single way, and
Mhm.
I think he deserves a lot of credit for this City team, even though everyone's talking about the money, blah blah blah. Not everyone can win as enthusiastically and as emphatically as Pep Guardiola with this City team. If you put pretty much any other top five manager in there, they'd struggle. I think Arsenal would win the league with pretty much any other manager at Manchester City.
Mhm.
He's just truly a dominating force.
Where do you think he ranks in the greatest managers of all time debate, especially if he goes on to win this treble?
Um, I tend to wait till people retire to place them anywhere, but he's definitely top five. He has to be top five. That he's done it at three different clubs. Creating the false nine position for Messi, one of the most genius things ever done in the sport. Like the list goes on and on and on. He can adapt and he can change as the game is changing, and he's usually the pioneer of those changes. He is on the forefront of changing of football. And Arteta says this all the time. His philosophy is inspired by Pep among others. There's so many managers out there that are now inspired by Pep. I mean, we've seen the change in English football since Pep arrived. Obviously, like
Mhm. Definitely.
who would have thought that Brighton would be playing the way they were like 6 to 8 years ago?
Yeah.
They were playing hoofball in the championship, like, and now they're talking about passing triangles. They're talking about positional play. They're talking about verticality and numerical superiority. These are things that no one could have even imagined before Pep arrived.
Mhm. I'm gonna give you one final opportunity. I'm gonna just give you the floor. Anything you want to say about this Arsenal team, about this Arsenal, title run, anything you want to say, the floor is yours.
One thing I will say is that I think Arsenal will be better next year than they were this year. I think the ability to go into the transfer market with Champions League football and this season on their resume is huge. They pretty much don't have to pitch themselves anymore to any potential transfer. I mean, for the last 7 years, it was tough. I mean, every elite player wants to play in the Champions League. It brings you more money, it brings you more fame, brings you more notoriety. It brings you the glory that you've always wished for when being a footballer. So it was tremendously difficult to convince people to come. And I'm surprised that Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko even joined last summer.
Mhm.
I'm sure Gabriel Jesus got paid exorbitant sums of money to sign for Arsenal, but that's neither here nor there. But I think they improve a lot next season, and I don't think there's any reason for this season to be considered a failure. Um, you go toe to toe with a club that has 115 financial irregularities, and they spend more money than anyone. They have the best manager. Um, so what more can you do in a season? I think you just gotta sign as many players as you can next year, and hopefully you have the opportunity to run for the title again. Uh, City could be one Haaland or Julian Alvarez injury away from, dropping 8 points in eight out of 10 points. And that's the title for Arsenal next year, potentially. It's run-ins like that, that make or break the season, like Arsenal had, where drawing 3 games in a row, then getting a win back, then losing again, then losing another game. And also the fact that Arsenal didn't get any points off of the 20th place team in the season this year is just kind of laughable. I think there are a lot of gimme games next year that I think will be switching towards Arsenal's way like that. Now that they have kind of some sort of respect and dominance in the league. I like, a lot of teams are afraid to play Manchester City. No one's really afraid to play Arsenal at the moment. I mean, certain teams are now, but prior to the season, no one was afraid to play Arsenal. And I mean, you have Nottingham Forest's center back coming out and saying that Arsenal were the best team in this season. He said Arsenal is an amazing team, the best in the season, even if they don't become the champion. Musa Nakate said that after beating Arsenal, they recognize that Arsenal is the best team in the league this season, even though they are able to beat them, which I think is tremendous. I think having that kind of humility after a win is very important for everyone to have. But I just don't see how Arsenal get worse. I can only see how they get better. Maybe I'm being naive, but they simply have to improve. And the main thing I think about when I think about this is bottling top 4 in 2022. That was one of the worst feelings for me as an Arsenal fan. So I know it was one of the worst feelings for our players. And they came out and they showed that the entirety of the season, they fought their hardest. I don't care about the end of the season. They showed why they deserve to be in the top 4. They respond to adversity better than any other team in the league, and they're the youngest team in the league. So I'm excited to see what they do next year. And I hopefully can be back on here when Arsenal win the title.
Well, if that does happen next season, I can confirm you will be back on here 100%. But I think this is probably the final question that I have. It just popped into my head because I've seen a bit of a debate going on social media. Obviously, we've seen a bit of a dip in form by Saka towards the end of this season. And I just wanted to ask you, do you think he should get 300K per week on his contract?
Saka should get a blank check, straight up. He's taking us out the mud. It pretty much, on multiple different occasions, he has taken the bull by the horns and guided this Arsenal club to places where I didn't think they'd be at this point. And I think he should be rewarded for that, no matter the dip in form. I mean, Saka, I believe he's featured in 74 straight Premier League games for Arsenal. The guy deserves a piece of the cake, and he deserves a break more than that. He deserves to just sit down and rest. So giving him a big contract, getting him some rotation, I think will be huge, and we'll see his numbers improve a lot.
So you're not worried at all about the dip in form, and you expect him to return to what he was doing maybe earlier in the season next season?
A dip in form and a contract does not worry me about Saka. He missed a penalty in front of countless millions of people and bounced back and had one of the best seasons in his career. So I'm not remotely worried about his mental fortitude.
Well, I mean, unless you have any other final words that you want to say about Arsenal, Man City, the Premier League, anything in general, I think that's all I got.
No, I don't think I have anything else.
So obviously, you're gonna have to let us know in the comments down below what you thought of Arsenal this season. Let us know anything that we said. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments down below. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. But I think without further ado, I'm Zach.
I'm Declan.
And we will see y'all next time for another video on the channel. Peace.